As juvenile crime legislation moves through the General Assembly, state's attorneys from across Maryland are making their voices heard. From a proposal to change when teens are automatically charged as adults,
the community is looking at us to make sure to keep them safe,
to ongoing concerns surrounding the Department of Juvenile Services and its role in the state's juvenile justice system.
DJS is broken, and it's been broken for 20 years.
I'm going in depth on the juvenile crime concerns and how some top prosecutors want lawmakers to address it. Thank you for joining us for this week's edition of Fox 45 News in Depth. I'm Mackenzie Frost. Juvenile crime is once again a topic of debate this legislative session. One proposal lawmakers are considering, the Youth Charging Reform Act. It would change how some juveniles are charged in Maryland when they're accused of a certain crime. Instead of automatically being charged as adults for certain serious offenses, teens would now go in front of a judge to decide whether that case would start in the adult or juvenile court. On Wednesday, the Senate heard another reading of the bill, and several Republican proposed amendments were voted down. One of those amendments would have ensured teens charged with a second or third offense were automatically charged in adult court. The bill's lead sponsor, Senator Will Smith, pushed back, claiming the vast majority of kids don't reoffend. But Republicans questioned that data.
The latest statistics from DJS show that 87% do not reoffend. So that's one thing. So it's kind of it's an anomalous thing, but you're still being held accountable. You're still going in the juvenile system. You're still being held accountable. You're still getting the services.
When you bring up 87% do not reoffend, whose numbers are those?
Those are numbers reported to us by the Department of Juvenile Services.
Oh, the one that had a really bad leadership issue and scandals with bad numbers? That department?
Those numbers are provided by the current DJS secretary.
As the bill continues to advance in the Senate, more critics are speaking out. State's attorneys from across Maryland have come together in opposition of the bill, saying it puts public safety at risk, along with the juveniles it's trying to protect. I sat down with some of them to talk about their concerns and what they want to see out of Annapolis.
Children have to understand.
These four top prosecutors from around Maryland are urging lawmakers in Annapolis not to pass what's called the Youth Charging Reform Act. Sponsor Senator Will Smith says the bill would put a 16 or 17-year-old charged with certain crimes in front of a judge to decide where the case should start, either the adult court or the juvenile system. The crimes now on the list are possession, sale, or transfer of a regulated firearm, use of a firearm in a drug crime, use of a firearm with a felony drug conviction, wearing, carrying, or transporting a handgun, and first-degree assault. How would that change how this process works?
Well, number one, the judge has no idea what that juvenile's record is. You'd have to have an entire hearing just to tell the judge, here's what's been going on with this juvenile. So law enforcement does this all the time. You're just shifting the roles. So it shouldn't be up to a magistrate or a judge to make that decision. We would overwhelm the courts.
Ann Colt-Litis, the state's attorney in Anne Arundel County, says the legislation would spark the need for more judges and other legal staff as well.
So you're literally shifting the way that we analyze the cases and decide, because we're making that decision. And we talk to the defense attorneys and the public defender. We talk to DJS. What can we do for this child? It's just not automatically. We're not looking to put people in jail, but we are actually looking out. We are ministers of justice. We are looking out for the benefit of the juvenile too, but we're also keeping in mind public safety.
Senator Smith says most of the cases end up in the juvenile system anyway, arguing it makes more sense to start them there, adding he believes the Department of Juvenile Services has the necessary programming for the young people.
They're already ingesting that work anyway. They're already doing this workload. We're just wasting a bunch of time and money by sending them to the adult system first.
But these prosecutors disagree.
It's not about money and time. It's about, where can these children be helped? The community is looking at us to make sure to keep them safe. And automatically sending children to a system that doesn't work now, that we know doesn't work now, is not the answer. Fix the system first. Have programs that actually rehabilitate children so that they don't end up in the adult court in 3 or 4 years. And then we can talk about it.
You're going to put more increasingly violent offenders with guns and robberies in the juvenile system. Do we have a Patuxent-like program with that kind of long-term intense therapy for 16 and 17-year-olds? We do it for the 18s to the 25s, but we don't have a program for the 16s and 17. So we're taking these offenders that could get services in the adult system that exists, because, look, I disagree. Somebody said the other day that the adult system is all about punishment. It's not all about there is punishment, but it's not all about punishment. It is about treatment, because so many of our people that come into the system have an issue that has to be dealt with. But build the programs, then make the changes.
When you talk about programs and programming, do you think that it would be more beneficial to the system and these young people overall if lawmakers would focus their attention on crafting legislation to build up the programming, or provide more funding to expand programming, or find a way to include more beds for these young people instead of looking at other aspects like the automatic charging?
Well, I know I do. And one of the things, when you talk to practically all the members of the Maryland State Attorney Association, I think we all pretty much feel the most important thing is the program. For instance, my friend and colleague here likes to say, why are you flying the plane? You're trying to build it as you're flying it. And that's what's going on. Let's go ahead and put programs for the young people that have the issues. The issues that kids had in the 70s, 80s, and 90s are a lot different than the issues these young people have now. Have we brought the programs up to date? Are we giving the mental health component, the educational component, the trauma-informed care component? Are we giving those types of programs to these young people? Do we have enough beds?
The Maryland State's Attorneys Association, led by Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates, now calling on lawmakers to implement a phased-in approach to the changes if the plan moves forward as anticipated. The group says while the 3-year phasing timeline unfolds as requested, it would give time for the General Assembly to invest in the, quote, necessary resources for DJS, something we took directly to the Senate president. Is that something that you would be open to, or do you think could be included in this plan?
The department and the Governor's Office of Children, Youth, and Youth believe that they have the sufficient programming right now and can move it quickly to deploy it. So my sense is the committee's position is likely what the full Senate position will be, that there is enough time to implement given the current timelines in the bill. So I do not see us taking that up right now.
Senator Bill Ferguson, who represents part of the city as well, says the state's attorneys have been at the table as lawmakers craft the legislation. He notes the version coming out of the committee, and the same one that's on the track for success, which is the first time in years, is being met with some pushback from all sides.
If the two opposite sides of advocacy entities are both a little bit upset, it means you've probably balanced the interests appropriately. And I think that that's likely the case that we have here.
As the conversation about more programming unfolds, some prosecutors argue what's available now simply isn't working.
And my problem is we have programs, what are they doing? And why are we releasing the young people before they've completed the program and received all the training, all the support that they need? We're doing that because we need the bed. If you need the bed, that means we need more programs for the young people. We're saying give the programs to the young people that they need, because eventually, unfortunately, we're spending more money prosecuting them later on. If you're worried about money, let's do the investment at the very beginning in our young people.
If it does pass and the governor signs it into law or lets it become law without his signature, what would that look like for you in your communities and your offices?
A few $100,000 more per jurisdiction, reallocating our prosecutors, investigators, case managers, more crowded dockets in adult court, things being delayed. And I think juveniles will be receiving dispositions, but there won't be a place to put them. And so we're just adding on, we're piling on to, a system that can't even take half of its individuals and find a placement for them. Mm-hmm. We're just going to add to that. And it's going to bog down the system, and people are going to get upset. Victims, witnesses are going to get upset.
It's going to be a dangerous situation for everybody who lives in your community. So, public safety is something we don't hear any conversation about in the discussion of this bill.
The public defender's office in Baltimore City has so many cases that their judges are issuing what's called show cause orders, What is that? A show cause order basically is the judge saying, why are we having young people not having lawyers? What's going on? Over 150 of them. So that tells you if they already can't handle what they have, why do you even want more? So now the young person's coming in. It takes almost 3, 4, 5 months to have an arraignment. Then it takes another 3, 4, 5 months to have an attorney. Then it's a postponement. So now this case that should have been over rather quickly, this case is dragged on for over a year and a half. Now the next thing we know is this young person has not received the services, they haven't received treatment, and guess what? That ankle bracelet they were on, they picked up 1, 2 more cases. Now they've AWOL'd a couple times. We just feel that because we really need to think how we're going to do this process, we need to get more money from the General Assembly for prosecutors, for judges. We need to really think about how this is going to look and how it's going to work for everybody.
Still to come, more from my conversation with 4 of the state's top prosecutors. They're breaking down the issues they have with the juvenile justice system and the change they want to see inside DJS. Beyond Annapolis, Maryland's top prosecutors also told me about their concerns surrounding the juvenile justice system as a whole. Since former Secretary Vincent Schiraldi's departure, the prosecutors say they're hopeful the agency can move in a better direction under new leadership. But they still have some issues with how DJS handles young offenders, including how they're monitored and held accountable. Going on to reoffend over the past several years. In February, police released this body camera video after 3 14-year-olds were accused of assaulting a police officer, allegedly hitting the officer with a car. The officer fired his weapon at the vehicle, which police later discovered had been stolen the day prior. 2 of the teens were tracked down for the theft with electronic monitoring, already wearing ankle monitors from previous robbery and auto theft. Why? Okay. Beyond Annapolis, Maryland's top prosecutors also told me about their concerns surrounding the juvenile justice system as a whole. Since former Secretary Vincent Schiraldi's departure, the prosecutors say they're hopeful the agency can move in a better direction under new leadership. But they still have some issues with how DJS handles young offenders, including how they're monitored and held accountable. We've seen several examples of kids on ankle monitors going on to reoffend over the past several years. In February, police released this body cam footage after 3 14-year-olds were accused of assaulting a police officer, allegedly hitting him with a car. The officer fired his weapon at the vehicle, which police later discovered had been stolen the day prior. 2 of the teens were tracked down for the theft with electronic monitoring, already wearing ankle monitors for previous robbery and auto theft charges. In October 2024, Baltimore police say a group of teenagers robbed the Royal Farms on Holabird Avenue. 3 14-year-olds were arrested and placed on electronic monitoring. Later that day, police say those same teens went back to Royal Farms and tried to rob it again. And in March of 2024, police say a 14-year-old was arrested for trying to steal a vehicle. According to officials, he was wearing an ankle monitor, and when questioned about it, told the officer, quote, "Doesn't matter, I'll be home later." I spoke with the state's attorneys about what they think needs to change within the system. For years, we've talked about concerns with juvenile crime in Maryland, and recently in Annapolis, the new chair of the House Judiciary Committee touched on the issue as well.
I heard a lot of fix the system, but quite frankly, I also heard the system's been broken forever.
What will it take for the General Assembly to fix this problem? And is it something that could even be legislatively addressed?
This issue came up last year. This is an ongoing debate. We talked about this last year. I think if you look at children that come into the criminal justice system, initially about 80% of them, from I think statistically, are going to be handled by DJS. I think the legislature's fundamentally started in the wrong place because they've come to agencies that get 20% of the cases rather than fixing an agency that during the course of the hearing, that you just mentioned it, several members, 5 or 6 different members said, well, the juvenile justice system, DJS, is broken, and it's been broken for 20 years.
If this has been broken for 20 years, what are we doing? What's the problem? What is going on in that agency?
Well, I have an idea. We're not addressing children individually. We're grouping people together and we're saying, okay, this is a first offense, so we're going to give you community supervision, or maybe we'll just close the case at intake. And they're not looking at the child on an individual basis. What does this child need? And so we're kind of moving cases along, and maybe the state's attorney's office sees that child, maybe the 4th or 5th case. And if a child's been involved in crime for that period of time, there are some ingrained behaviors going on.
With the new secretary leading the Department of Juvenile Services, these 4 top prosecutors say they're optimistic Betsy Fox Tolentino can make progress with an agency plagued with problems.
I'm cautiously optimistic. I like her a lot as a person. I see her heart is definitely in the right place. Remember, she's also the architect, many say, of the juvenile legislation from 2022. You have to remove a lot of the cancer that's sometimes in your organization, and then you have to put it people who think like you and are moving like you. It takes time for it to grow. But I do believe that her heart is in the right place, and I think they are moving in the right direction. And understanding that, she has a big job. Big job in the sense there are a number of individuals that have some systemic beliefs that are different than some of the policies that she's putting forth. I would love to see them take the opportunity to really rebuild the agency.
I think that it's wonderful to replace the former head of DJS. I think that the new head of DJS has spoken to us on multiple occasions. There is a dialogue, which I welcome, always welcome the opportunity to discuss what's happening here.
We've seen the issue with the seemingly revolving door of young people. State's Attorney Bates, recently there was a situation in Baltimore City where 2 kids were arrested in connection to another offense, and investigators tracked them using the ankle monitor that they were already wearing from another offense.
Correct.
We've had this conversation about ankle monitors 2+ years at this point, and it doesn't really seem like anything is changing within DJS.
Well, that's why I say, from my standpoint, DJS needs to take its time to look at its agency and organization and make the tweaks and fixes that they need to before they take on more. Once again, when you look at young people, we want to help young people. I don't think what people realize, with prosecutors, we're not saying let's lock them up. We're saying let's give them the services so we don't see them on the adult side. That's what we're saying here. But if you continue to coddle young people, continue to make excuses for their behavior, then eventually, unfortunately, they come to the adult side.
Are you seeing the same type of things in your communities when it comes to ankle monitors and the apparent lack of monitoring?
I can tell you we had a shooting in a public high school for a second time in Montgomery County in recent years. And ankle monitors were involved in the case. So, I mean, the fact that somebody is being monitored in the community on the ankle monitor is not going to necessarily prevent us from seeing that child again.
In terms of ankle monitoring, we in Prince George's, definitely it's an issue. I just came into this role in June of 2025, and within a month or two, I made it my business to go sit down in juvenile court. And within a month or two, I saw at least 2 to 3 children who were on ankle monitors who were back before the court having committed another offense. And I believe carjacking in two of the 3 that I saw. It's a problem. It's a problem. The children, I think that the system is a joke. They understand that they can move through the system without much accountability. And rehabilitation requires accountability. It requires learning that your actions have consequences. And unfortunately, too many of the young people in the system right now believe that they can just move through the system without really facing any consequences for their actions.
Do you believe that the accountability piece of all of this has been missing? And when did that go missing?
An apology letter is not enough. Children have to understand that there are consequences to their actions. I think about my son at home. I discipline my son because I love him and I want to teach him that he's got to be able to follow the rules in society, in our home. The same thing goes for the young people in our community. We love them by disciplining them and showing them there's another way. Right? So to answer your question, rehabilitation does involve accountability in my mind.
Now, if a juvenile simply doesn't attend a program, isn't responsive, there's no accountability. So the state's attorney's office is not being notified. The magistrates are not being notified. Cases are being closed without any input from the police or prosecutors or magistrates. So DJS has this level of autonomy now to close out things, and it's only in rare instances, usually that 4th or 5th crime, that we find out, or if it's super serious, then we find out about it. So if that young person is escalating, but car theft or other thefts, and then we don't see them until they have a handgun, where was that intervention? There's nobody checking and balancing what everyone's doing.
When they made DJS the gatekeeper, and DJS does not have the accountability that prosecutor office has or that the judiciary has, but they're kind of hiding behind a cloak, so to speak, we don't know what's going on with DJS. They changed the rules. They made it so that no one will know. Everything is hidden. No one understands what's going on, and we have to believe everything with DJS. And that is good for some individuals, but if others have an agenda to show that, oh my gosh, juvenile crime is down, we want to defund the programs to make everything look good, then that's not good for the community and the society, and that's why I think in many ways we are where we are now.
The state's attorneys also told me they're keeping an eye on other legislation making its way through the State House. That includes a bill which would expand the list of convictions that qualify someone for enhanced sentencing, largely focused on weapons charges.
The prosecutors are able to ask for enhanced penalties if there is a prior conviction for a handgun. However, it's limited to prior convictions in Maryland. And as we all know, crime is fluid. We live right next to the District of Columbia, and people move, live, work, and play between Maryland, District of Columbia, Virginia, on a regular basis. And so accountability shouldn't stop at the border. we need to make sure that we're able to use prior convictions from other jurisdictions where enhanced penalties would be appropriate.
Another bill state's attorneys are watching is a proposal to limit who can issue an arrest warrant and increase penalties for filing false police reports.
And so I think it's a common sense bill that makes sure that the system works fairly for everyone.
Look, most of us have diversion. We have systems set up so that we review those cases once they come in without police review, without prosecutor review. In my office, 80% of those cases go away. And we get thousands of them every year. And so 80% of them go away. And it's not just, you also have the situation with a person who's charged with a crime, or maybe they've been arrested, or even, like I think they shouldn't be allowed to summons anybody without a review from a judge.
This week, we asked whether lawmakers should move forward with changing how juveniles are charged in our state. We'll take a look at some of your responses after the break. This week, we asked, should lawmakers move forward with legislation to change how juveniles are charged in Maryland? Let's take a look at what some of you had to say. Ted was simple with his response. He says yes. Wade says, how about they change the punishment to fit the crime? Jenny says the law should not be changed to increase the ages of those charged as juveniles when they commit adult-level crimes. Tim says charged by the crime they commit, not by the age. One more. Timothy says they want to commit adult crimes, let the punishment fit the crime. All right, that's it for this week's edition of Fox 45 News in Depth. I'm Mackenzie Frost. Thanks for watching.